Hey everyone, my name is Ryan, and today we need to help you master one of your most important skills in your entire tool belt. It's a skill you're going to need, whether you're applying to medical school, dental school, a job, or any postdoc school. You need to have this thing mastered, and it is interviewing. It's something that all of us have one time or another been a part of, whether that be for an entry-level job, whether that be for something more difficult and grander. But the trick to it is, it's something we all still need to refine and become much better at. Now, there's a few things that I want to focus on today. There's so many that we could talk about, and I just want to get all of you started on your path to becoming a master interviewer. The first thing I want to talk about today is how to come prepared to any interview. Any type of question that they're going to ask you, and what you need to do to walk in and be able to control, in a sense, that conversation, so that way you are calm, cool, and collected. The second thing that I really want to emphasize today is what you need to do after the interview is over. Once the interview is done and finished, I'm going to talk about just a couple of things, particularly thank you letters that you need to send out. And then I'll talk about just one more quick tool and tip about practice, practice, and practice. Let's get started. All right, everybody, let's talk about coming prepared to interviews. This is something that's going to be vital and going to be the difference between you and the rest of the people that they want to interview for the exact same position. First note is I want to talk about humility. That is something that at this university I found we're super good at. We like to be humble about ourselves and not take all the credit. That's fine. Now, when it comes to an interview, we need to tone ourselves up. We need to fill the shoes that they're expecting us to fill. I'm not saying you need to spend the whole time in an interview when they ask you a simple question, bragging about something you may have done. What I am saying is you need to make sure you emphasize why you alone are the absolute best fit candidate for their position. They have lots of other people that they may be looking at for the exact job or spot in their program that you want. And you need to make sure that you tell them exactly why you are their best candidate to fill that position. Now, let's talk about being prepared with that in mind. So, when it comes to being prepared, we need to come to these interviews knowing what this school, program, job does and what they focus on, and why do you care? Why are you actually interested? Because if you don't have a genuine interest in what they do, why are you interviewing there? There are so many opportunities for you in the world. It is time for you to make a decision on where you want to go and be engaged there. So you need to pick those choices carefully. Now, when I say come prepared, like what do they do? I want to emphasize this. No more than their brochure. I want, and you definitely need to go to these interviews with more knowledge about their school or about their company than the brochure. Then more than what you could find out just by sitting down while you're waiting to get interviewed and picking up their brochure about their campus and reading. You need to know what the professors research. You need to know why you're interested in the research. So that way when it comes down to sitting in the interview, you can have an intelligent conversation with these people about what they do and about why you're interested in what they do with their careers. That can make a huge difference. That sets you apart from everyone else because you're now engaged, and they'll remember you because people will associate what they like to do and what other people associate with what they like to do very strongly, helping you stick in their minds. So that's one. Let's go to two. Two, be prepared for common questions. Go find them online. There's tons of them. Now, what I'm not saying is don't expect every single question from these lists online, like from Princeton Review or from PubMed, to show up in every interview you go to for whatever it is. That's not going to happen. They don't have the day to actually ask you all these questions. So what you need to make sure, though, is to sit down with someone, whether that be your spouse, whether that be a friend, whether that just be a roommate. Just sit down and start running through these questions. Because when it comes to these questions, they can be very tricky. Whether they range from, I don't know, one, what's your stance on treating a patient with HIV? To two, what's your current thoughts on the direction of our economy? These are some simple questions that they can come out. Anything's free game in these scenarios. And if you cannot sit there and be calm, cool, and collected with whatever they ask you, then the chances are they might not think too highly of you when they start thinking of stressful situations you may be put in and needing to answer and be the face of their company or of their college. So you need to be able to answer these questions. You don't need to answer them all, but you need to practice with them. Be familiar enough with a huge variety, so that way if anything comes up, even if you've not thought of it before, you can sit back and think. That's okay to think, guys. Guess what? At all these places, you're going to be asked to think, to go above and beyond. To make sure you do that, don't say the first thing that pops into your mind. You don't have to say whatever comes to your head when they ask you something difficult that you've never thought about. When they ask you and say, what are your thoughts on abortion? You don't need to immediately give whatever comes to your mind. You can sit back and calculate your response to these things. Tell the interviewer, I would like to have a candid response to that. Give me a second. Think about it for a minute. Formulate something logical. Give them something that will actually carry the conversation forward, other than I think this. That's a simple yes or no to it. That way it creates an engaging conversation, because that's what these interviews are. Now, the other thing about interviews, I didn't put it on the board, but I want you to realize, is an interview is also an interview where you get to ask them. Come prepared with smart questions. People are far more engaged in the conversation where you ask them questions. When you have something that they can answer to you, that is so much more important, because they now have to think, and that puts them further onto your track and keeping you in their mind. That's just a few things that I wanted to get you started on when it comes to actual interview. But you need to practice these things. And we'll talk about that last in this video. But let's go on to what you need to do once you finish nailing that interview. All right, everybody. Last two things. Let's run through them. So, second thing, after we talked about coming prepared to the interview, is what do we do after the interview? There's lots of things that we should be doing that we got to get better at doing. And it's a common courtesy to these people. They've invited you out to their place of business or their campus. We need to make sure that they understand that we respect that they've given us of their time, and that we know that they cared enough to actually send out the letter. So guess what we're going to do back? We're going to send them a letter as well. Take a piece of paper out, take a scratch notebook, probably something nicer than this. Make sure you ship it, mail it, whatever you want to do. Make sure they get one. Make sure that you sent them something to acknowledge, like, hey, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you, to learn from you, because as we talked about last video, you should have learned from that interview, and to ask questions. And make sure you thank them profusely. Don't be too long with it. Just keep it short and sweet, but let them know that you are appreciative that they gave you the moment. That way, you put your name back on their radar just another time. Especially do this within 24 to 48 hours to interview. Do it quick. If possible, do it that same day. That way, they're aware that you are very thankful for the opportunity they gave them. Now, the other thing that we have got to make sure that we do is when you're leaving their campus or their job, be kind to everybody. Same thing when you're going there. You don't know who is reporting to them. You don't know that. So be your best self all the time. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about with interviews, and this is just last thing in this video. Remember, you need to get going on this. You need to start getting better at interviews. It's important. Is make sure that you become an expert in practicing. There is a great place on campus nobody knows about, I feel. It's right across from the Cougar Eat and the Wilkinson Center, and it is the Career Center. They will help you go through mock interviews whenever you want. Just go through, schedule a time. I would encourage you to do this now. Start this week if possible. Start getting up there and start practicing. Interviewing in a live scenario with people that you're not super comfortable with is so important, and they can give you good feedback. We don't want to wait for you to get to that interview and say, I've never really interviewed before. No, we have it in front of us. Take every opportunity you can, whether it be at the Career Center, which I highly, highly encourage because they're great to work with, or whether that be at career fairs. Come up to people and booths, ask them if you can interview with them. Get your skills honed in, everybody. And those are just a couple of things I wanted to help and share with you to get you started on your path to becoming a great interview. Good luck, everybody. Keep up the awesome work and start moving towards becoming an expert and putting that tool in your tool belt.